Hey, how's it going, everybody? Sean here for another movie review today. We're going to be talking about the 1996 action thriller Eraser. The film is directed by Chuck Russell. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Vanessa Williams, James Kahn, James Coburn, Robert Pastorelli, James Cromwell, Danny Nucci, Andy Romano, and others. The logline plot synopsis is: a witness protection specialist becomes suspicious of his coworkers when dealing with a case involving high-tech weapons. So yeah, Eraser. Now, if you don't know, there's no reason for you to know, I was a big Schwarzenegger head back when I was a kid growing up. In our house, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies were like an event. Like, we'd either go to the theater, and if we didn't go to the theater, we would rent it, and everybody would gather around the television, 7, 8 o'clock at night. We'd watch whatever new offering Arnold had for us, you know? And it was always very exciting, you know? And especially at this time, in the 90s. You know, he's coming off of a string of a murderer's row of cool movies, from Terminator 2 to True Lies. What else does he got here in the early 90s? Total Recall, Last Action Hero. Yeah. I've been a Last Action Hero stan since I was a child. That's right. Always very excited. And Eraser is often looked at as kind of the end of an era for Arnold. Like, he starts back in the 80s. He's kind of like just makes hit after hit after hit. There's a few in there like Red Heat, not so popular when it first came out. I know it's gained an audience over the years. Same thing with Running Man. These were not necessarily the most popular movies in the world. But even in, like, you know, he was such a versatile presence. Maybe not the most versatile actor. He doesn't have the greatest range or anything like that. But when he would made a movie, it was just like, it was a big deal to everybody, you know? Everybody flocked to his action movies, his fantasy movies, his comedies. I mean, amongst the movies that he made, or some of my favorites, especially just even if it's just nostalgia driven, you know, like Terminator 2 right off the bat, huge movies. Conan the Barbarian, a giant movie for me as a kid. I watched that thing to death. Total Recall, another big kind of touchstone of my youth. And I remember watching Eraser back as a kid. And, you know, at this time of my life, I was like 10 years old. You're not super discerning. You know, you're not film analyzing anything. You're not getting into the nitty gritty of what does and what doesn't work, or what performance is good, what performance is bad. You know, something I kind of miss about being a kid is just this uncritical eye. You just kind of liked everything. So when I was a kid, I liked Eraser. I was a big fan of Eraser. I thought Eraser kicked ass. And, but it had been a long time since I had watched it, you know, because I watched it ad nauseum when I was a kid. All the time. I used to rent. I remember going to the corner store. This it was called, this store called the Four Corners, because it literally was set at a four corner intersection. So it was called the Four Corner store. They had a very like small kind of video selection, but I used to walk a couple miles. It was like 2 miles from where I lived as a kid, and I would walk there just to rent movies, and I would rent Eraser like all the time, like over and over again. It was the same way when I was younger, even younger. I was like 6 or 7. I would get my mom to rent me like Terminator 2 all the time. It was Terminator 2 and these Pippi Longstocking movies. Like, those were my go-tos when I was like 6 or 7. That's what I wanted to watch all the time. But anyways, so Eraser is kind of in that same vein. I just watched it because I just assumed that I liked it. You know, I just assumed it was an awesome Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I had no awareness of the fact that it was kind of a bomb. Well, to a certain degree. It came out the same summer that Mission Impossible came out, Independence Day came out, and I know there's a few other big 1996 movies that came out. So I didn't know that. You know, I just saw it as a rental. I might have even seen it in the drive-ins. My family was a big drive-in family. And this came out in the summer of 96, so it stands to reason that I might have actually gone to see it in the theater. I can't remember, though. It didn't leave that much of a lasting impression. But it had probably been, I gotta say, the last time I saw this, I was maybe like 14 or 15. And I know it's been on streaming services and and stuff like that over the years, but I don't think I've actually like sat down and watched it. And what brought it back to my kind of attention was I occasionally will do this thing, what I call hot reacts only. And a lot of times up to this point, all but one, they were kind of movie-centric songs. I thought it was interesting to go and watch and analyze and kind of goof on movie songs, movie tie-in songs. And I stumbled across the Vanessa Williams song for ERASER. It's almost like her bodyguard. and it just brought it back in my mind. And over the past few months, I just kind of thought about it a lot. I was like, I should watch ERASER. And then I was, as I'm one to do, I was like perusing clearance bins online for Blu-rays. And they had a double featured disc. It was ERASER and Collateral Damage. And I was like, fuck, this is it. Like $4, we're getting ERASER. So I watched it this morning. And it, like I said, it's probably like, I want to say like 16 years. Like that's the minimum probably since I last saw it. Maybe even longer than that. Might have been like 20 years. I'm getting old. 34. So what did I think of it now? Coming back to it now, all this time later, now that we're 6 minutes into this fucking diatribe, this false review, it's okay. Like, I had a good time with it. Like, you kind of have to separate yourself and you kind of just have to accept it for what it is, accept it on its own terms. It's a dumb, fun, action, espionage, thriller kind of a movie. Like, the plot itself is so fucking dumb, like, it's almost, like, not even worth commenting on. It's so inconsequential to the things that happen in the movie that make it enjoyable. And it's also a movie that's very much, like, set in the time that it was made. Out of all of, like, the Schwarzenegger movies that you can watch, a lot of them age pretty well. You know, you watch something like Terminator or Total Recall, or even like The Running Man, like I mentioned before. Like, those movies have actually aged pretty well. True Lies has aged fairly decently. This one, out of all of them, maybe in the same vein as something like End of Days or maybe even Jingle All the Way, like they feel very much a piece of the time that they were made. ERASER is very much that. Like there is a layer of cheese on top of this thing. There's a layer of contrivance and convolutedness and the awkward adoption of CGI. There's it was in the trailers and stuff. They have like there's an alligator or something that ends up eating a dude because there's a sequence that happens in a zoo. So it's like, it's just that, like, that time of filmmaking. And they weren't like on par. They weren't doing the same kind of things that were being done and things like in the contemporary movies that came out. It's like when you watch like Jurassic Park, it comes out in 1993. There were other dinosaur movies made around the same time. You had like Super Mario Brothers, the movie. And then you had this other movie. It's like a Roger Corman movie. I can't remember what the fuck it was called. My mind is blanking right now, but it was like starred like a stock cable movie action dude. It's not prehistoric. I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, I think Mystery Science Theater 3000 actually spoofed it back in the day. But so they were just kind of behind the curve. It wasn't, but it's also not the goal of the movie as well. It is the most stock, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle I think maybe has ever been made in a lot of ways. He's not asked to do very much in terms of an actor or anything like that. It's almost like a movie that feels like a business decision. A business decision for everybody involved, and like everybody's like, oh, they're friends with the producers. Yeah, we're going to make a movie, and we're going to hire our friends, like James Caan's in this. Vanessa Williams is in this movie for some reason. Like I know she was kind of a thing in the 90s. But for the life of me, I have no idea how the hell she got cast in this. She was in a few movies around this time. Like a couple years later, she's in Shaft 2000, as it's usually called these days. The one with Samuel L. Jackson. What else was she in the 90s? Like, she tried to break into acting. Like, she did a lot of TV movies leading up to this. Then she was in, like, Soul Food a year later, Hoodlum, Dance With Me. But anyways, it was a weird choice in my opinion. But anyway, they were just trying to make her a thing. It just seems like such a product. like such a corporate studio product, more than a lot of the other ones did. Because, you can say what you want about Schwarzenegger, but he was pretty savvy business-wise, and he was pretty savvy about, for most of his career, at least up until probably this point, about who he worked with. Like, he was a guy that would go hand select directors, and a lot of times he would do that based on their previous work. Famously, like for something like Total Recall, like he seeks out Paul Verhoeven. He's like, Paul Verhoeven's fucking crazy. He watched some of his old Dutch movies, and he was like, holy shit, this guy's nuts. Let's get him to fucking direct Total Recall. And now we have Total Recall, which is a classic, which is a movie we're going to do on Zoobox Goes to the Movies at some point. I think Profit and I are going to do that. Someday we'll do that movie. But yeah, it's got that feel to it. But it's something that I find like oddly comforting. It's like chicken soup for my soul. It's like these mediocre action movies, these mediocre thrillers, these mediocre mystery movies from like the late 80s and 90s. Because I was a kid that grew up with Stars and Encore. And if you know what Encore is, it was like the third rates, the bottom of the barrel of the movie channels. And they would play just tons of obscure old movies. Honestly, like the modern analogy, or what's analogous today in terms of streaming services, is Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime has become one of my favorite streaming services because they have a deep, deep bench of like obscure, weird movies like I'm talking about. And I love to watch them. They're not good. I don't even talk about them on the channel. Like, there's not a lot to say about them a lot of times. If I went in and really like kind of analyzed and wanted to get into it, like I could find something to say. Back when I was doing this every day, I would be able to find something to say about it. But this like feels like that. It feels like one of those movies. Nothing is like specifically bad. Nothing is specifically great. But there is something about it that just kind of makes me feel warm. I'm old enough now where I'm starting to feel like the sense of nostalgia about things. And when I was watching ERASER, I definitely felt that. I felt those nostalgic pangs for a movie that is just not a classic. It's maybe not even worth my nostalgia, but I just kind of can't help it. It was just almost like baked into my DNA, like because of how much Arnold, in a weird way, was a part of my like cinematic diet growing up as a kid. But that's not to say there's things I don't like about this movie. One of my favorite parts of this movie is James Kahn. James Kahn. Who doesn't love James Kahn? Who's a fucking great actor. Misery, Rollerball, The Godfather, Michael Mann's Thief, Elf. He's even fine in Elf. Like I kind of think he's okay in that. But he's like one of my favorite like kind of character actors from this time. And I don't know what he was doing in the 90s. He just did a bunch of like really kind of mediocre stuff. He did Bulletproof. I think that's that Adam Sandler, or Damon Wayans movie. And then he would do such weird stuff like Bottle Rocket. Like he was all over the place. He was Honeymoon in Vegas. He would just do trash and then do like really good indie stuff. He's a great actor, and he's interested in taking on interesting roles. This one definitely feels like he's phoning it in a little bit. He's kind of just the most basic bitch version of a heel, if you will. And he's got so many great moments, so many great lines. He gets to really kind of chew the scenery and just be a POS. One of my favorite parts of the movie is actually like at the end of the movie, the climax takes place in a shipyard, and he's part of this weapons manufacturing company, or he's a government agent, but he's working behind the scenes, taking payoffs from like these weapon manufacturers that are now selling these high-tech weapons to terrorists, basically. And they're on a big shipping container, and it's being like lifted into the air, and him and Arnold Schwarzenegger have literally a physical fight where James Caan somehow is beating the shit out of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And that's after James Caan literally tries to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger by flying a plane into him. Like the movie, if it was a little bit more self-aware, and it kind of just embraced how ridiculous and how stupid some of the stuff is, it probably would have fared a little bit better in terms of actually being a good movie. Like, this is very much a good movie in quotations, you know? It's a good movie to me because I enjoy it. Like, I don't get into this guilty pleasure shit. Like, guilty pleasure is a phrase for cowards. Just like what you like. It doesn't mean you need to go to the fence and bat for it and defend it to the death. You don't have to do that. Like, you know what it is. You understand. Intellectually, I understand this is not a good movie. But it's a movie I like. I enjoy it, you know? And I don't think a lot of people would. If you showed 10 people this movie, probably 4 of them are going to feel the same way I do. To one degree or another. Maybe 2 of those people actually they just like it. And they don't understand why you would think it's bad. Because it's not like incoherent. It's not incompetent. And it's directed by this guy, Chuck Russell. And as Charles Russell at the time. And Chuck Russell is a weird director. He had such a weird career that I wasn't like consciously aware of, I suppose. Because I've seen all of this dude's movies. I've seen, he starts off his career with A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, one of the better Elm Street movies. He does the remake of The Blob, which is actually pretty good. And then he does The Mask, a movie I have quite an affinity for. Like, it's another one of these movies. It's a weird movie. It's got its own tone. It's got its own style. It's, doing live action Tex Avery cartoons. It's a movie that I enjoy, but I understand when people say that they don't like it or they don't get it. Like, I get it. Then he does Eraser, then Bless the Child, The Scorpion King. He does this crappy Travolta programmer in 2016 called I Am Wrath. And then he does like this Hindi movie last year. And apparently he's going to do Witchboard. So he doesn't even have that deep of a bench in terms of a filmography. As a producer, actually, I think he has more credits. Going back before he started directing stuff and after. But he's like this, he's a journeyman, but he's like better than a journeyman. It seems like, if maybe given the opportunity. Maybe he's just too much of like the business end of things. Because this movie is actually shot by a guy who's like he's a journeyman director, but when he's able to do it, like he's able to really deliver. His name is Adam Greenberg. Okay, and he apparently he DP'd on this movie as a favor to Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger had to ask him. Schwarzenegger actually even had like John Milius doing rewrites on the script. That's like everybody likes Arnold. They like to work with Arnold. He's good about that stuff. I mean, this guy shot the Terminator, Terminator 2, Alien Nation with James Kahn movie. He did what's other like Toys. Another interesting movie. Sphere. Not a great movie, but like shot well. I'll say that. And then you find all these like these crappy comedies and stuff. Like he did like 3 Men and a Little Lady, 3 Men and a Baby. Another good one, Near Dark. He shot Near Dark as well. He does like the Sister Act movies. He did First Night. He does Renaissance Man, Dave, Inspector Gadget, Rush Hour. Definitely a working DP, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like when he shot this movie, it's very flat. It almost feels like a TV movie. And like I said, like at the beginning of this whole spiel, there's all these other movies that came out that summer that kind of elevated the action movie form. Especially like, say what you will about the Mission Impossible movies, but Brian De Palma's first Mission Impossible movie is a great, fun spy thriller. And it's actually got a lot of in common with Eraser. Like Eraser would have liked to have been a Mission Impossible movie. And they wanted Schwarzenegger to be that kind of Ethan Hunt character, but do it Schwarzenegger style, It's like watching True Lies without like the wink, because True Lies, it's a very solid action movie. It's a fun movie. It's an action comedy. But it plays a little bit more straight, but there's a deep satirical edge to what you're watching. And Eraser is like if you just removed that and just did it straight. You just took away any self-awareness, and you just made, like I said earlier, like the most basic Schwarzenegger vehicle humanly possible. And one of the reasons I brought up the Adam Greenberg, the DP, because like it's so funny. You know, Vanessa Williams obviously starts as a supermodel. If I'm not mistaken, she was, I think she was a singer. And the way she is lit in this movie was I found it hyper distracting because they light her like she's a supermodel. So everything has like this weird, like only when you see close-ups of Vanessa Williams does the movie look like this. It's got like this soft focus, this heavy light on one side, and then everything else on the other side is almost like smeared out of focus, like to try to give her like the supermodel halo look. It's like, it's very funny. Like I couldn't stop laughing every time Vanessa Williams had like a single shot. That's what it looked like, and it was just like really tickled me the whole movie. But like I said, you know, I've talked about this for a long time. I guess we went on kind of a journey there, though. We went on a little bit of a personal journey. But, like, there's not much to comment on in terms of, like, the plot or the writing or anything like that. It's just what I said. It's just the most basic Schwarzenegger programmer that you could have made. It's like his whole career. It's like, in the way, like, I think actually what I said earlier was perfect. Like, the way that True Lies is kind of like this culminating movie for him as a celebrity, him as a persona. And it's the same thing actually Last Action Hero does this pretty well too. I'm a fan of Last Action Hero. I know a lot of people aren't. But, and not to say this is a perfect movie, but I do like Last Action Hero. That movie kind of has that, but even on a deeper, more, even funnier satirical way than True Lies does. And this is like an accidental parody of that. Which is interesting. On a kind of a meta layer, it's interesting. You know, I gotta tell you, I had a good time watching ERASER. I didn't really know what to expect of it. I didn't know what I was really getting into when I put it on. I was very curious because it had been so long, and I was pleasantly surprised by just like how much fun I had watching it. Even sometimes laughing at the movie, but I was having a good time. Like I actually had a pretty good time watching it. So if you're of the right mind, if you're the type of person that can get on ERASER's wavelength, I think you'll have a good time. But it's so fucking stupid. It's so convoluted. And there's this whole like subplot with like this mafia stuff going on, and like the guy he saves in the beginning, like they bring him back as like comic relief, but he's also like this way into the mafia, and it's so fucking stupid. It's so dumb, but in a way that I find earnest and entertaining. I found it very entertaining. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my Twitter, for my brother Dan's Twitter. Also, make sure to follow us on our other YouTube channel. It's my old YouTube channel. So if anything ever happens to this channel, that's where we'll be. Also, follow us over on DLive. I'm doing all of our live streaming. We're banned from live streaming on YouTube right now, so I'm doing it all on DLive. We're having some fun over there. We can get away with a lot over there. So, you know, the doors are a little wider open in terms of beating YouTube's algorithm. You know, it's like I always provide commentary, I always pause, I always do all that stuff, but sometimes the algorithm does not care, and it literally would pull down streams like midstream or block it for like a minute or two. It was very frustrating. But anyways, you guys have the best day ever. Have a good one. Goodbye.